he was born Ivan IV, Grand Prince of Moscow, a title soon to be outgrown. From the very beginning, his life was marked by turbulence and tragedy. At 3, he became an orphan, a pawn in the hands of ambitious boyars, Russia's powerful nobles. These nobles, driven by their own desires for power, saw the young prince as nothing more than a tool to be manipulated. Their cruelty, their constant scheming for power, left an indelible mark on the young boy. The court was a place of endless plots and betrayals, a dangerous environment for a child. Young Ivan, witness to their machinations, grew up in the shadow of the throne, his spirit hardening, his mind turning inward. He learned early that trust was a luxury he could not afford. In 1547, at 16, he took the crown, the first Tsar of all the Russias. This moment marked the beginning of a new chapter, both for Ivan and for Russia. A new era dawned, one soon to be painted in shades of blood and terror. The skies over Moscow seemed to echo the foreboding that lay ahead. Ivan's early reign held promise. He was a young ruler with grand visions for his country. He reformed the legal system, expanded eastward, and brought the powerful Orthodox Church to heel. These reforms were aimed at strengthening the state and centralizing his power. Yet beneath the veneer of progress, the seeds of tyranny had taken root. The same experiences that had shaped his early years were now influencing his rule. The boy who had witnessed too much violence, too much treachery, was transforming into the man history would forever remember as Ivan the Terrible. His childhood scars were now manifesting in his governance. His temper, always volatile, flared with increasing frequency. The court, once a place of political maneuvering, became a stage for his outbursts. His trust, once offered freely, became a rare and dangerous gift. Those who once stood close to him found themselves walking on a knife's edge. The turning point, the catalyst for the horrors to come, arrived in 1560. This year would mark a significant shift in Ivan's reign. Anastasia, his beloved wife and trusted advisor, died. Her death was a blow from which Ivan would never fully recover. Whether from illness or, as Ivan believed, poison, her death shattered something within him. The loss of Anastasia was not just personal, it was political. Grief, mingled with suspicion and rage, consumed the Tsar. His sorrow turned into a dark obsession, fueling his paranoia and anger. The man who had already tasted power now surrendered to its intoxicating embrace. Power became his solace, his means of coping with the loss. His reign of terror was about to begin. The seeds of tyranny had fully blossomed, and Russia was about to enter one of its darkest periods. Ivan created the Oprichniki, a secret police force that answered only to him. These black-clad enforcers spread fear and carried out his brutal orders. They terrorized villages, executed nobles, and instilled a climate of fear throughout the land. No one was safe from their reach. As his mental state deteriorated, Ivan's actions became more erratic and cruel. He isolated himself, trusting no one, and his paranoia grew. His violent outbursts became more frequent and unpredictable. The court, once a place of order, descended into chaos. Ivan the Terrible's legacy is one of both progress and horror. His reign left an indelible mark on Russian history, a complex tapestry of achievements and atrocities. Today, his legacy is still felt in Russia, a reminder of the thin line between power and tyranny. The seeds of his reign continue to influence the nation's history and identity. Novgorod, an ancient city of merchants and artisans, had long been a thorn in the Tsar's side. This city, with its bustling markets and thriving trade, stood as a beacon of prosperity and independence. Its people were known for their resilience and their fierce sense of autonomy, which often put them at odds with the central authority of the Tsar. Its wealth, its independence, and its whispers of rebellion fueled Ivan's paranoia. The Tsar, Ivan the Terrible, saw Novgorod not just as a city, but as a symbol of defiance against his rule. The city's prosperity was a constant reminder of what he could not control, and its independent spirit was a direct challenge to his authority. In 1570, he unleashed his fury. Leading an army fueled by a toxic mix of religious fervor and blind loyalty, Ivan descended upon the city. His forces, driven by a fanatical belief in their divine mission, marched with a singular purpose: to crush the spirit of Novgorod and bring it to its knees. What followed was a scene of unimaginable savagery. The once vibrant streets of Novgorod were transformed into a battlefield, where the cries of the innocent were drowned out by the clash of swords and the roar of flames. For 5 weeks, Novgorod became an abattoir. The city's defenses crumbled under the relentless assault, and its people were subjected to horrors beyond comprehension. Churches were desecrated, homes looted and burned. The sacred places that once offered solace and hope were defiled, and the homes that sheltered generations were reduced to ashes. Men, women and children were slaughtered indiscriminately. The brutality knew no bounds, as the soldiers, driven by a mix of fear and fanaticism, showed no mercy to anyone, regardless of age or gender. Drowned, burned alive, impaled on hooks, their bodies left to rot in the streets. The methods of execution were as varied as they were gruesome, each designed to instill terror and break the will of the survivors. The Volkhov River, once a symbol of lifeblood for the city, ran red with the blood of innocents. This river, which had sustained the city for centuries, now carried the tragic evidence of its downfall. The exact death toll remains unknown, lost to the chaos and deliberate obfuscation. The records that could have provided clarity were either destroyed in the carnage or altered to hide the true extent of the atrocity. Estimates range from a few thousand to tens of thousands. The sheer scale of the massacre is still a subject of historical debate, but what is certain is that the impact was devastating. The massacre at Novgorod marked a turning point in Ivan's reign. This event was not just a military campaign, it was a statement of absolute power and a warning to any who might dare to defy him. No longer was he simply a stern, even ruthless ruler. Ivan had crossed a line, transforming from a feared leader into a figure of terror. He had become a monster, a butcher of his own people. The image of Ivan the Terrible, once a ruler with a vision for his nation, was now overshadowed by the bloodshed he had orchestrated. The terror he had unleashed was not merely a means to an end, it was a tool of control, a way to instill fear and ensure absolute obedience from his subjects. It was an end in itself. The massacre of Novgorod was a dark chapter in history, a stark reminder of the lengths to which a ruler might go to maintain power and the devastating consequences of unchecked authority. The Novgorod massacre, horrific as it was, proved merely a prelude to a wider reign of terror. This event, marked by its sheer brutality, was just the beginning of a dark chapter in Russian history. The massacre set the stage for what was to come, a period where fear and violence would become the norm. In 1565, Ivan established the Oprichnina, a state within a state, designed to enforce his will with absolute and brutal efficiency. This new institution was not just a political tool, but a manifestation of Ivan's growing paranoia and desire for control. The Oprichnina was a radical restructuring of the Russian state, dividing the country into two parts, the Oprichnina and the Zemshchina. The former was directly under Ivan's control, while the latter was left to the traditional administration. Clad in black, mounted on black horses, the Oprichniki, Ivan's personal guard, became the embodiment of his paranoia and rage. These men were chosen for their loyalty and ruthlessness, and they operated with a level of autonomy that made them feared throughout the land. Their black attire and ominous presence were designed to instill fear and signal their authority. These were not soldiers, but instruments of terror. They were a force unto themselves, answerable only to Ivan. Their primary role was to root out and destroy any perceived enemies of the Tsar, using whatever means necessary. Their methods were brutal and their presence a constant reminder of the Tsar's absolute power. Given free rein to plunder, torture and kill, they spread like a plague across Russia. Their actions were not just sanctioned, but encouraged by Ivan, who saw their brutality as a necessary tool to maintain his grip on power. Villages were razed, families torn apart, and entire communities left in ruins as the Oprichniki carried out their grim duties. Their methods were as varied as they were gruesome. Boilings, impalements, and other forms of torture were commonplace. The Oprichniki took a perverse pleasure in their work, often devising new and horrific ways to inflict pain and suffering. Their cruelty knew no bounds, and their actions left a lasting scar on the Russian psyche. Flayings, all carried out with a chilling detachment that spoke to the depths of their depravity. The Oprichniki were not just enforcers, they were executioners, carrying out their gruesome tasks with a cold efficiency that was terrifying to behold. Their detachment from the suffering they caused only added to the horror of their actions. No one was safe, not the boyars, not the clergy, not even the common folk. The Oprichniki's reach extended to all levels of society, and their wrath was indiscriminate. Boyars, who were once powerful nobles, found themselves at the mercy of these black-clad enforcers. Clergy, who had previously enjoyed a degree of protection, were not spared either. Even the common folk, who had little to do with the political machinations of the time, were caught in the crossfire. Not even the common folk. The Oprichniki's terror was all-encompassing, affecting every stratum of society. Peasants who already lived hard lives found themselves subjected to even greater hardships. Their homes were destroyed, their families torn apart, and their lives forever changed by the Oprichniki's actions. The Oprichnina's reign of terror lasted 7 long years. During this time, the fabric of Russian society was torn apart. The constant fear and violence took a heavy toll on the people, leaving them traumatized and broken. The Oprichnina's actions had far-reaching consequences, affecting not just the immediate victims but the entire nation. It shattered the old order, decimated the boyar class, and left the Russian people reeling. The traditional power structures were upended, and the boyar class, which had once been a significant force in Russian politics, was all but destroyed. The people, left without their traditional leaders, were left to fend for themselves in a world that had been turned upside down. It was a period of unimaginable cruelty, a testament to the depths of darkness that can reside within the human heart, particularly when fueled by absolute power. The Oprichnina's reign is a stark reminder of what can happen when power is unchecked and used to instill fear and maintain control. It serves as a chilling example of the potential for human cruelty and the devastating impact it can have on a society. History remembers Ivan IV as the terrible, but what drove this man to such unspeakable acts of cruelty? Was it madness, a sickness of the soul, or something else? Or was it cold, calculating cruelty, a deliberate strategy to maintain his grip on power? The answer, like most things about Ivan, is complex and shrouded in the mists of time. Some historians point to his troubled childhood, the trauma of witnessing his parents' deaths and the constant intrigue of the boyar court. Others highlight the potential for mental illness, citing his erratic behavior, his fits of rage, and the deep paranoia that plagued his later years. Still others argue that his cruelty was a calculated tactic, a means of cowing his enemies and maintaining control over a vast and fractious realm. The truth likely lies somewhere in the intersection of these explanations. Ivan was a product of his time, a ruler shaped by the brutal realities of medieval politics. But he was also a man of extremes, capable of great love and profound hatred, of enlightened reform and unspeakable